Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is precisely 5:31 p.m. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Our meeting is officially open with a quorum present. We will move to our pledges, which will be led by Ms. Claudia Garibay. Ms. Garibay?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Turn it back over to Ms. Garibay for our recognition of our students who performed and greeted prior to the meeting.
President Jackson, trustees, and Dr. Ramsey. Tonight, we were greeted by the Junior Reserve Officer Training Course from Western Hills Air Force, including Cadet Major Karen Medina, Cadet Major Leonel Munoz, Cadet Captain Xavier Garcia, and Cadet Staff Sergeants Landon Cox and Daniel Masinga. Let's give them a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, this group is led by Senior Aerospace Science Instructor, Colonel Retired Russell Molesky, and Director Lieutenant Colonel Retired Richard Crossley. Please stand to be recognized. Thank you very much. Delighting us with their music tonight are the I Am Terrell Academy Singers, accompanied by members of the East Fort Worth Community Jazz Band, directed by Kathy Bernal. The I Am Terrell Academy Singers are led by Director of Vocal Music, Mary Margaret Socknich. I Am Terrell Academy for STEM and VPA Principal Baldwin Brown, and Director of Vocal and Elementary Music, Jesse Cannon II, and the Executive Director of Visual and Performing Arts, Christina Avila. Please join me as we recognize their work and dedication. This concludes our recognitions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garibay, and thank you and congratulations to the honorees this evening. You all are outstanding. You're awesome. You're the reason we're here. Thank you. Let's give them one more round of applause. And we applauded so well, we've earned a 3-minute break to take pictures. Thank you all for pausing with us. Dr. Ramsey, we're ready for the Lone Star Governance Early Literacy Update.
Thank you. We're excited this evening to present the early learning update for our Goal 1 while our two chiefs and associate superintendent make their way up. I just want to comment that while we know that this board, as a new team of 10, is looking forward to new goals, it's really important for us to continue presenting out to our public how we're doing, and we're really proud tonight because, well, I don't want to steal their thunder. So we have a very positive LSG update, so I'll go ahead and turn it over.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. Tonight, board, we're going to look at our Goal 1, which is our literacy goal. And I want to give you an early literacy progress update as well as reviewing the overall goal. So Goal 1 is for our third grade students on STAR. These are our historical data along with our data from 21-22, where we see coming out of the pandemic for third grade literacy, while we still have work to do, we already at third grade have exceeded the pre-pandemic level by 3 points. So happy to see that based on the hard work of our teachers, our students, and their parents, that students are recovering following the pandemic. These are our goals by student group. And then just a reminder overall of our STAR scores for third grade at each level, because while the board set the goals at the MEETS level, which is the on-grade level criteria, we also have students passing at the approaches level and the master's level, and you'll see that at all of those levels we are either back to or exceeding our pre-pandemic levels. So again, kudos to that third grade work. Goal Progress Measure 1.1 looks at our pre-K students, where we start building the basis for our third grade scores. You'll see here that in 2022 we were at 79% in pre-K with English and Spanish combined, and that's just 1 point below, so almost back to our pre-pandemic. So early childhood working hard as well for all students and our student groups. Just a reminder that in pre-K, we're looking at phonological awareness, so that very basics of letters and sounds that we want our pre-K students to know, along with rhyming and some other age-appropriate literacy skills. This fall, we had our students testing with Circle for beginning of the year. The board set goals for end of the year, but looking at beginning of year last year compared to this year, slight differences. English, we were about 1 point lower than last year, 2 points lower in Spanish, but definitely within the range that we can accelerate and bring those kids up to meet that overall goal. Also wanted to remind the board, consistent with prior years, that students who attended Fort Worth ISD pre-K were much better prepared for kindergarten than students who did not. So we see that this year, 37% of kids who did not attend Fort Worth ISD pre-K showed kinder ready. Those who did were at 66%, so a 29% difference, 29 percentage points difference. Looking at, okay, the clicker just stopped. Can you guys click up from over there or no? Thank you. All right, so Goal Progress Measure 1.2 is map reading fluency. This assessment is given to students in K through 3. This, combined with our MAP growth assessment, provides a lot of information to our classroom teachers for our early learners in literacy, and really, they're knocking it out of the park. You see that last year, in K through 3, we exceeded the target of 43 by 10 points at 53%. So thank you to the board for the support on adding this measure. This provides additional information to teachers that are teaching in our early literacy classrooms about where their students are, and gives them progress monitoring information on this very important skills. Kindergarten, it's phonological awareness, and for grades 1 through 3, sentence reading fluency, which are basis for our MAP growth. Those are our goals by grade level. And then looking now at fall data. So where are we now? We see that in phonological awareness, last year we were at 24% for our kindergarten students. This year, 22%, so very close there. With the sentence reading fluency, again, I'll remind you because it looks a little shocking when you see that first grade at 5%. This is an overall goal regardless of grade level. Is the student at a certain level for sentence reading fluency? So the kids that you see there in that 5% and the 28% at second grade are accelerated learners. They're already at a level equal with some of the third graders for end of the year. So good progress and good start here for those students, and we'll continue to monitor that and report back to you on that. But our students are doing a great job, and our teachers are doing a wonderful job in using this information to help accelerate that learning for children. This is that same information by student group. And you can see that same consistency, some places a little higher, a little lower, but very consistent for beginning of year. Finally, goal progress measure 1.3 is MAP growth for grades K through 3. And again, our teachers and our learners did a fantastic job at the end of 2022. We know we still have work to do, but they already exceeded that goal by 5 points. So the goal was 39. At end of year for 22, we were at 44%. Now I know the board's going to work with Dr. Ramsey to set new goals, but right now tracking the goals that were set in 2019, our teachers are on track and gaining back from the pandemic. I think when those goals were set, no one expected a global pandemic, and they are still keeping and exceeding the pace. And those are our goals by student group. And then I wanted to show you, we've looked at this a few times, so I'll orient to it, but I think you're getting used to these blue bars and gold diamonds. So the gold diamond is the grade level norm where we would expect students to be, and this is comparing where students were in fall of 21 to where they are in fall of 22. So for example, where a first grader maybe was in fall of 21, where would we expect them to be as a second grader in fall of 22? At first grade, you see we have some work to do. The blue bar, observed growth, is not at the norm. And we will continue to work on that with our early learners. Dr. Sorensen will talk some more about steps being taken there. But second grade is at the norm. And then most exciting to see, third grade, fourth grade, that's phenomenal. The students' observed growth is way above the norm. And while we said we still have work to do, this is how we attain that work. We make greater than expected growth so that we raise achievement. So really excited to show you this early information this year, and we'll look at this again at middle of year and then end of year. Here's our MAP growth reading for the fall compared to the national norms and last year. And you'll see that we're pretty much on track there as well for the beginning of year norms. And we finally have Spanish norms. So I know that's something the board has asked about, and NWA has been collecting the data, and now we have Spanish norms. So these are separated. You've seen them together before or only English. These are the first year we've had those Spanish norms, and I wanted to call attention to kindergarten and first grade. We're 1 point above the Spanish norms, which is unusual in a large urban district and very encouraging to see that, and close to it on second and third grade. Last, I want to talk to you about the MAP growth that we use as a projection towards STAR performance. This is for third grade level in English and Spanish. The orange bar that you see is the 2022 end of the year meets grade level. So third grade scored at 37% meets. Right now, based on our beginning of year scores, we would have 25% of our students meet. Luckily, this is not a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's information that helps our teachers see where students are and where they need to have additional supports and how much they need to grow from beginning to middle and middle to end to meet and exceed those STAR grade level standards. And you see on Spanish, last year we were at 17% for meets all students, and the projection is 13%, which we fully expect to beat that projection. These are the same information by student group. So this is English for each of our student groups and their last year's star at the meets and this year's projection based on beginning of year. So test was taken last week of August, first weeks of September, so we already have growth and learning built on top of this. And then here are students in Spanish by student group. Last thing I wanted to show you tonight was the board approved Lexia as an additional Tier 1 support, so students could get some individualized practice in addition to the instruction they get from their teacher. And we did a study with Lexia, NWA, and our STAR scores and found that these are very closely aligned. So Lexia is working well as a tool to help us and help teachers monitor the progress of students. So this one looks at the middle of year on-target students in Lexia who were ultimately proficient on MAP. It's comparing Lexia and MAP, and 81% who were on target at mid-year met MAP proficiency. Also, 81% who were on target for end-of-year Lexia were proficient on MAP on the benchmark. So not all students were meeting their targets on Lexia, but those who were, it is aligned with MAP. Similarly, those who were predicted at middle of year to be on course for STAR were 79% were. They met the proficiency. And then for end of year, 77%. So we're seeing some very strong alignment here, which tells us that this is a good tool for our teachers to use with students to help track progress on the STAR test and the end of year state standards. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Sorensen to talk about our supports for early literacy.
Thank you. And so I wanted to point out that we are having a shift in thinking here in Fort Worth ISD, and I think you're seeing it in the data, that early learning is not just pre-K. Early learning is the conversation that we're having, that pre-K to 2 is very significant if we're going to have the conversation about third grade readiness. And so what we do in our pre-K to 2 space in terms of how we teach students how to read, and what we do in that space around foundational literacy and foundational skills around literacy is just as important as what we do in third grade. I think Dr. Ramsey at the last meeting talked about how the STAR is changing. And so in order for our students to arrive at third grade ready, what we do in the pre-K to 2 space around foundational literacy and biliteracy is going to be very important. And so we're having conversations with our principals and with our teachers about what the instruction really needs to look like in this pre-K to 2 space. And so want to present to the board and to the public that when we discuss early learning, we're not just talking about pre-K. Wanted to also orient the board and the public around HB3 and our progress as a district and where we are in terms of the number of teachers that we've trained thus far in the science of reading, completed between 2020 and 2022, teachers, principals, assistant principals, and campus instructional coaches, and the number of teachers and so on and so forth that we have currently enrolled. We are on track. We have 89% between 2022 that completed, that were eligible. And then what we have currently is 90% of those that are eligible are also currently on track. So we feel like as a district, we're making great progress with the teachers in K-3 across our district who are making progress in the Texas Reading Academy, is really creating that strong foundation. So congratulations to our leaders and our teachers across the district who are really putting in very hard work to complete these Texas Reading Academies. It is quite a lift. Want to thank the board for their support in compensating our teachers for doing this work. We also, again, want to thank the board for providing us the support for our Spanish intervention materials. These are supplemental materials that provide our dual language students support in addition to core. We know that we talked quite a bit last time about our TELPAS scores, and so we want to point out that we are doing extra for our dual language students to make sure that we are leaning into biliteracy and providing our students in our dual language programs extra support through Estrelita, Esperanza, and the suite of materials in order to ensure that we are supporting biliteracy and dual language instruction. And again, to support what Associate Superintendent Arispe said, we have Lexia Learning. This is a complement to core instruction, and Amplify, which is our core resource for literacy in our K-5 space. But also wanted to lift up what teaching and learning and campus supports look like and how we're differentiating those supports for our high needs campuses. Our job in teaching and learning and academics is to make sure that we are providing differentiated supports for campuses who need it the most. And so wanted to support our campuses who are non-rated or who have a C rating currently, where they are assigned a content coach in order to support in-classroom instruction, modeling, coaching through PLCs for effective lesson delivery through co-teaching, model lessons, in there rolling up our sleeves so that they can do lesson internalization, unit internalization, and work side by side with our principals, work side by side with our teachers so that they are internalizing the new curriculum, because it is a shift in practice in how we teach our students how to read. We have intentionally designed supports and professional learning, and again, lifting up that we have a new early learning curriculum that again is deeply engaging with early learning coaching on campuses, and of course, disciplinary literacy that we've talked about before, which is academic vocabulary, reading, writing, listening, speaking in all content areas. And now I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Moore, to talk about school leadership and their support for early literacy.
Thank you, Dr. Sorensen. Trustees, before we jump into additional supports that are being provided to our campuses from the school leadership perspective, we felt it may be beneficial to hear directly from some of our principals, some of the comments that our principals, and even we actually received comment from one of our teachers about what support has looked like around early literacy. Many of our principals speak about our new curriculum. One of the comments around Amplify is that it's rigorous and engaging for students. The vocabulary and discussion students engage with is just incredible. We also have principals speaking to the overall support. Early literacy supports of new curriculum, both our pre-K curriculum and Amplify, has been tremendous. Not only have teachers received purposeful and relevant professional learning and then ongoing coaching, but I, as a campus leader, have received support that has greatly improved my ability to provide meaningful support to my teachers. Great comments directly from our principals. One more principal shared with us that teachers are loving the structure, especially our new teachers, which I think is very powerful. They love how the instruction is modeled, and then also the activities that students engage with. And then that principal also shared a comment from one of her teachers, actually a 29-year veteran, who is a literacy teacher, that said, Amplify, our new curriculum, has changed and stretched my thinking as an educator. All, I think, are powerful comments about the work that we're purposefully doing around early literacy in Fort Worth ISD. When we talk about supports from the school leadership perspective, want to make sure that we understand when we talk about school leadership, it's not just our school leaders, our principals and assistant principals. It's also our executive directors, our team that supervises our principals out on campuses. Supports that we're providing to our teachers and students revolve around our leaders participating in professional learning, actually the same professional learning that our teachers are engaged in, so that we're learning with them and we're able to support the work that they are actually taking back into their classroom. With that, an area of support is around professional learning communities. PLCs being focused on Amplify implementation, the implementation of our new curriculum. A chance for teachers to internalize, to learn what the new lessons look like, and then practice before they get into their classroom and providing instruction for the first time in front of students. We're also, from a school leadership team, looking at how we're calibrating what we're looking for in classrooms so that principals, assistant principals, and executive directors are all looking for the same high-quality daily instructional activities, and so that our teachers aren't getting mixed messages in some of our visits and supports. And then with that, we're taking literacy walks with our teaching and learning team, the academics team, so that we're all aligned with what best practices around early literacy looks like. And then finally, as you heard earlier today, we spoke about MAP data, the work that really provides us some formative information about where our students are growing. We're looking to our principals to lead conversations around that data with our teachers so that we can really pinpoint areas to support students in their growth and learning, not just at the end of the year, but throughout the year. And then finally, as you'll see on the agenda today, you are approving campus improvement plans. And those campus improvement plans are all centered around the same goals that you have set as a board, the goals that we have here in early literacy, and we're supporting our principals and our schools and our teachers of getting students to achieve at levels that'll meet those goals as we have set. So just wanted to share that information with you, and with that, we would all be happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah, trust.
I'm getting no read. Thank you, Trustee Dar. Thank you, Trustee Phillips.
Thank you, President Jackson. I'm sorry my screen is not working properly. And thank you for this great report. Personally, I love good news. I appreciate the fact that you're bringing good news, and I appreciate the fact that you recognize that there is still so much work to be done. And too often we think we can have one or the other. We can either have the good news or we can have the bad news, but no, we can have good news and we can still recognize that there is still work that is yet to be done. And I think it's also important to remember that all of this data is student data, and as the numbers for all of Fort Worth ISD increase or decrease, but right now they're increasing, that indicates there are students in our district that are making more than 1 year of progress. And that is not to be overlooked, because we see these numbers and they're just numbers on a piece of paper or on a screen or wherever, but these are children, as those numbers go up, that are making more than 1 year of progress, sometimes 2 years of progress. And sometimes those kids that are making more than 1 or 2 years of progress still aren't passing that test, but they're getting closer every single year. So thank you for that, and I appreciate you recognizing the work that the teachers, the students, and the parents and the administrators are all doing, because that's critical. And I will say that the 29-year veterans comment about Amplify gave me chills. Absolutely gave me chills. I would also do have a couple questions on slide number 17 with the fancy gold diamonds or gold. Did it disappear?
Yeah. We'll see if we can make some magic over here and bring it back, but I'm looking on my paper copy, so maybe I can.
Okay.
There we go.
There it is.
Yay for
so
the
where it
magic.
says grade level norms, projected growth, are those norms that are specific to Fort Worth ISD, or are these norms that are established by NWEA based on national data?
National. Thank you for asking that. Yes, those are the national norms, and then the blue bars are our actual Fort Worth ISD progress toward those national norms.
Okay. And with the MAP data, when teachers are getting those reports, and I know that you're not reporting on this today, but when teachers are getting those reports, does it delineate where students are mastering and what they're mastering and what they're not mastering? For example, a student who repeatedly misses inferencing or repeatedly misses generalization, so that the teachers can zone in on those specific TEKs.
They do get that information about the areas and the constructs that students are weak in on each administration, and that's one of the places where we're happy that we also have Lexia, because it picks up there and then the student can get additional practice. If we're in the same classroom and you need inferencing and I need main idea, more practice on that, that allows the teacher to individualize instruction, but also additional practice opportunity for the students.
Okay.
So yes, it does.
Okay. I'm not sure what just happened to the microphone, but
It was a little weird.
we'll just keep talking. My final question is, how does this data that we're looking at today factor into, last meeting, we saw a report on return on investment. How does this data factor into the work being done to determine the return on the investment that Fort Worth ISD has made?
Sorry. So I think that that's a great question. And so things like this, we will work with Carmen and the team to put through the processes that we have in place in order to determine things like Lexia, things like MAP, even though, you know, some of these are not ESSER funded, to say, are these things working? Are we producing academic return on investment? Are we seeing results as a result of using these products, right? The board approves Lexia, right? Are we seeing results of, the board approves Amplify, right? And that is an ESSER-funded initiative. Is it producing results? And so through the processes that DMG and Carmen and her department establish, we will then establish criteria. We will hold ourselves holistically accountable to those criteria, and we will look at student outcomes, and we will say, is this working or not?
Thank you. And just one more time, children making more than 1 year's worth of growth in 1 year. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Dar. Trustee Bridges?
Thank you guys for the report. I just got a couple real quick questions. When I look at the data when it comes to pre-K students, we all know that students do better if we get them started in pre-K and how they tend to advance quicker and faster. But one of the challenges that I see them talking about in my community, there never seems to be enough spaces for those kids. And if we know that, and I know we don't want to, how do I say that? We don't want to go interfere in some of these mom and pop businesses who do the pre-K, but it's evident that we know it helps kids to do much better in school, and if we can keep them on, get them on track earlier, that they tend to do better. So that's my first question. Go ahead.
Trustee Bridges, what I would say from a school's perspective is we're monitoring our enrollment in pre-K every year. We're looking at campuses that have a certain number of seats where we have more interest in the pre-K program and making those adjustments. We actually make adjustments within the school year. So while we do not have the same type of enrollment criteria as we have kindergarten through 12th grade, we have increased the number of seats, and we are pretty nimble when it comes to the desire in certain schools. If there's a higher concentration, and we respond before the school year starts, and we can respond in preparation for next school year also.
Just roughly, what's the percentage you increased? You say you increased your number.
We increase based on the interest of enrollment at each individual campus. So we don't increase overall across the district. We look at campuses that are underutilizing seats and campuses that may have a higher request for seats, and we can move some of those units to the different locations.
Okay. This is my part two, and I love to see progress, that what has happened. I guess where some of my concern comes in is that with so many kids, for lack of a better name, pandemic kids who came in at first grade, or pre-K, during the beginning of the pandemic and tried to do their work in front of a computer, and we all know how that didn't work out. But I'm thrown off when I look at some of the tutoring for some of our students, and it's online tutoring. How do we, most of the kids that I saw who did the online classes, it didn't work out. Are we monitoring that just to make sure that we're not losing out? Because it doesn't seem like it's a whole lot, this is from my perspective, different having them doing the tutoring online opposed to them being at home online?
So I'll answer that. So yes, we are monitoring that very closely. Each campus, I think Ms. Molinar covered this last time, each campus had the opportunity to pick which tutoring option they had. And so we are working very closely with each campus to monitor how it's working, how it's not working. We're getting feedback from campuses and we're adjusting. There are some campuses that have an online option where we've now added monitors. We've added tutors to the tutoring program for campuses that have picked an online option and have some buyer's remorse around the option that they chose. And so now we've added tutors to the option that they've chosen, because while that option has not violated their contract, it is not necessarily working for their particular campus. So we've been nimble in our response and added additional supports to make sure that the students are getting what they need.
President Jackson, if I may. I had the opportunity to see one of those online interventions yesterday at a school, and I had very similar questions for the principal. And she really broke down for me that it, just like everything else in life, it's very individualized. And she has students where that is where they thrive. That if they're even in a small group tutoring session, they're not going to ask questions, some of them for a variety of reasons, and having an adult in the room and watching as they're going through their online tutoring, that is actually working for them. And so as a school district, I think what we will continue to do is provide many options, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all. Just like online was really successful for some students and they never came back because that worked best for them. We know that online will never replace a teacher, but for some students, having the ability to do that online tutoring is successful. So we'll continue to visit schools, talk to the people closest to the issue, and then be nimble as we can.
Thank you.
Thank
Trustee
you.
Bridges, you good?
I'm sorry, it's really is it. How are we, with some of those students who, with the huge learning loss, how successful are we getting them into Saturday school? Because, you know, not just, and I'm glad that all kids are there, but the kids who are doing really, really well are being there, opposed to the kids who are struggling. What strategies are we using to make sure that we get those kids in?
So I think that we are monitoring the data. We are consistently looking at the attendance of which students are showing up and which students are not. I have a very strong partnership with Mr. Moore on this, and we are reporting back to campuses which students are attending and which students are not. And we are partnering with campuses to consistently do outreach. And doing our very best, and I think Dr. Ramsey lifts it up very well. There are some families who are going to choose Saturday, and there are some families who are not. And through our very best individualized efforts, we're going to do all that we can to outreach to our families and partner with schools and partner with principals and partner with campuses. And there's still going to be sometimes that families don't choose the Saturday option. It's our responsibility as the district to feed that data to the campus and partner with the campus to provide them the support and also then respect the choice of the family when they don't choose to respond to our opportunity.
And as a reminder, as we were talking about the academic ROI, that is one of the programs that we are evaluating. So while this particular presentation is about early literacy, we will provide some of that in writing for all the trustees.
Thank you. Trustee Bridges, you good? Trustee Evans.
Thank you all so much for this report. Like Ann said, it's good to see where we've made progress and where we need to continue to improve. Dr. Sorensen, I think it was last year you described our approach to literacy instruction as a seismic shift. And it's not easy to keep going after a seismic shift. So I want to echo Ms. Arispe's thanks to all our teachers, academic coaches, principals, because the hard work is truly evident in these numbers and these gains. I do want to talk about specifically slide 7, and that's goal progress measure 1.1. And this is really just kind of pointing something out, and as we go forward, when we re-examine and redefine our goals and goal progress measures, I just want to make sure that what we're measuring is really predictive of what we need. So, for example, if I'm reading the chart right, this year's third grade African Americans, when they were in pre-K, they had 79% phonetic awareness. But our third grade African American third graders aren't reading, 79% on grade level. So, where's the cliff in third grade as we approach third grade? And how do we study and modify accordingly?
So just to talk a little bit about, this is one piece, right? One piece
Right.
for sure of what is tested, what the standards are, and then as we continue to move with the science of teaching, reading,
Right.
learning, definitely additional pieces. Something that we'll bring to the trustees at another date is the big gap that most urban children, or urban school district, children have is the knowledge gap. Where as a system, as a community, we need to provide children opportunities so that when they read, they can understand based on the information that they already have a lot of knowledge of. A good example is, I'm going to use Dr. Rodriguez here, right? She's a big baseball fan. And while obviously she reads at a very high level, if I were to give her a passage and there were words in there above her reading level, she will understand more than someone that isn't a baseball fan because she understands the concepts. She has that knowledge. A child who has a knowledge gap isn't able to decipher all of those words. That's the big piece that societies are starting to see and communities need to come together on. We have to provide our students that wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to go to the ocean, to go skiing, to see an art museum, to be exposed to high language at a more professional maybe level. The opportunities so that they best have the opportunity to understand and comprehend language. So we're starting to see it as we push into science and history. That's a space where our students are now reading about subjects that are outside to start to narrow that knowledge gap. And so I think we'll see it as our students continue to grow, but it's been an issue in this community and many communities where students just really still have that knowledge gap.
Thank you for that explanation. So I guess my question, I'll just leave it here, is can y'all bring us a plan to help address these knowledge gaps so, we can use our goal progress measures, when we tweak them, these and the ones the next iteration, but so we know, we can get our third grade African American boys reading at 79% on grade level, and we can see the cliff as it comes, and maybe redirect as needed, like you've talked about. So, thank you.
I'll just answer very quickly. Amplify in K2 is divided into two components. There is the skills component and there is the knowledge component, which students are immersed in every single day. So the skills component does give our students the foundational skills in phonological and phonemic awareness. And there is the knowledge component that Dr. Ramsey is talking about that exposes our students to it. And then the second component is the shift that I'm talking about, that we have to begin to pay attention to the K2 space and the foundational skills that our students are receiving. in terms of, because we do see the data slide, that our kids come in really strong, and then there's that slide that happens between pre-K, K, and then third. And so if our kids are going to arrive at third grade ready, we've got to really pay attention to that pre-K2 space as intentionally as we're paying attention to our tested grades. You're welcome.
Trustee Martinez.
Slide 10 shows the research that students who attended Forward ISD Pre-K perform better than the students who did not attend. What percentage generally of the third grade class, like of the current third grade class, what percentage of them attended Forward ISD Pre-K?
I can't answer that for you as we're sitting here, but I would be happy to get you that answer. So it's a good question.
Okay, and we also know that so much of literacy readiness begins even before pre-K. What partnerships and programs do we have in place or will have in place to reach parents and particularly to reach those children in the 0 to pre-K space? That early childhood.
That's a great question. Through the work that we're doing with our early learning work and through the studying of our early learning space through our BCG work that, again, the board was so generous in allowing us to look through, we do have several partnerships through that ecosystem of the birth to 3 space that we are seeking to develop. They are not necessarily strong enough because we know that we have historically just thought about the spaces and places that we own. And so we have work to do, and I'll be interested to share with you what we've learned in our first phase of the BCG work about where we need to grow in that birth to 3 space in not only our space as a district, but throughout the city.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to learn more about that and how, again, how the city can partner with us to do that.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Phillips.
Thank you, President Jackson. Dr. Sorensen, you spoke about a shift in thinking as well as a shift in practice. And so I know we had a few testimonials from some of our folks that are undergoing this shift that we're doing, right? But I was hoping that you all maybe could speak a little bit more to what is this shift looking like? Because we know change is hard sometimes. So the fact that we're now pivoting and we're going in a new direction, what are some of the early returns or feedback you're seeing as far as what this shift is looking like practically?
Great question. Thank you, Trustee Phillips. It's a learning process, and I think that's just the reality where we're at right now. People are stepping out of their comfort zone, out of their years of experience around teaching, and looking at new strategies and new ways to ensure that students are learning how to read and reading so that they can learn. We're working diligently. We're getting positive responses from our teachers. I think when we talk to our teachers about Amplify, I'll just use last year as an example. We started a pilot of a new curriculum that was really going to support our teachers in 3 pyramids with the intention to expand to 3 additional pyramids this year. And we expanded to the rest of the district because of the response of our teachers and our school leaders. And that is a testament to the experience that those 3 pyramids had last year as a pilot on the change of their instruction and the support that they were receiving. And so while this is a learning phase right now, we will continue to support our teachers and help them grow and know that we'll continue to see the efforts pay off for our students.
Indeed. And so do we have any ways of gathering, I guess, information about how the students feel about the new programming and everything that they're undertaking?
We certainly do. We actually have a process where we're talking to our teachers and we're talking to our students. I think the best way to see it, honestly, is to see the work that the students are engaged with. When we go out to our schools, see the work that our students are displaying, the conversations our students are engaged in, but we'll have intentional conversations. We'll be glad to share some of those with the board as well so that you can hear what our students are saying about their new literacy practices and their learning.
Good. And bottom line, we want to see results, of
Yes, sir.
course. So it's not just about whether they like it or not,
Understood.
but a like will be good, right?
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
But whether they like it or not, we want you to be able to do the stuff. So.
You got it.
Indeed. No, thank you very much for that. And then, of course, Dr. Ramsey, you know, very early in your tenure, so I know you're just being presented with a lot of this information. But as you have been presented with this preliminary information, I guess just giving you a little space for some thoughts, maybe as you're seeing where this particular section is, about some initial thoughts maybe you had as you were being presented with this.
So like the initial steps, we as a cabinet had the opportunity at the Texas Urban Council to have a discussion about early learning and also career college military readiness. And so we had the first kind of talks. It was the first time ever that the cabinet, most of the cabinet had the opportunity to meet me in person and spend some time with me. This is the area, I mean, there's the pillars of while we're K-12, if we don't get the early learning right, if we don't get the expanded learning right, then we're never going to get that career college military readiness piece right. And so we have to have some hard conversations about how long our littles go to school and why they aren't in class, the same as our older students. We need to really be deliberate and have conversations so that we don't put out of business our local child care centers, but how can we push in with more partnerships than we've already begun to make sure that there's a viable curriculum, that it's high dosage, high quality instruction happening for our 3-year-olds in particular throughout our city. And we need to start talking with our city, our county, and all of our nonprofits so that when a parent learns that they're going to be a parent, we can start having conversations about how important it is to read, sing to your child, talk to your child, and start that early development so that we don't continue to have the $1 to $5 million, listen to me, $1 to $5 million word deficit that we have when a low SES student starts kindergarten with a school district. Because that, you know, I hate the deficit thinking, but when they come to us with a deficit, we're reacting. So we're one part. We really need partnership of our community college that does work in early learning and preparing those educators with our city, with our nonprofits, with our child care centers. It has to be all of us working together. That's the way to get students reading on grade level by 3rd grade.
Okay.
So we're working towards that.
Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. Thank you, President Jackson.
President Jackson, I just want to make a statement that one of the things I've noticed in going to some of the schools, how amazing it is when some of the kids are telling the story of what they're learning, what they're reading, what they're doing in math. Why aren't we videotaping that? Why aren't we telling our story from that perspective? Because most people on the outside, I'm just going to be frank, they would be shocked that that's going on. And I'm sorry, that's just my perception, how we've got to do a better job of telling our story.
Thank you, Trustee Bridges. I just have a couple of questions. Page 5 will be slide 10. First, this is a really cool slide. And when you look at Fort Worth ISD, no pre-K, and it's at 37%. Did those children attend any pre-K?
Great question. They may have attended a pre-K. The data that we have that we know for sure is who was with us. And so we compare who was with us to who was not with us. And some of the children who were not with us may have attended a pre-K, like through their church, through a home provider, or through one of the commercial pre-K centers. That information we don't currently have. We just know they did not attend with us.
As our superintendent speaks to this alignment that we need countywide and that everybody needs to be on board, it would be nice for us to start to collect that so we could demonstrate the outcomes. The second thing I have is, do we know the areas where pre-K is not attended well And what is our true outreach there? How are we reaching out to these parents? Our superintendent just alluded to the fact we need to start at age 0. What are we doing, and how can we do a better job? How can this board help in the community?
Yes, we do know where pre-K is attended well and where pre-K is an opportunity for us. When it comes to outreach, that's part of the work that we're doing right now around our strategic plan around early learning, so that we can look not just within the communication strategies of Fort Worth ISD, but look at our external partners across the city and the area to help us reach communities, families that are not connected with Fort Worth ISD yet, so that we can bring the students of need into our campuses.
Thank you. This slide proves that pre-K works, that Fort Worth ISD pre-K is working, and we need to get that message out. I know everybody in this room's heard it, but we really need to get it out. This is amazing data for our kids. I have one more question. English and Spanish combined, each student counted once, with highest score taking precedence. Now, STAR really troubles me because it's one day in a child's life. It's one snapshot that defines them for a whole year. I love it that we did this. Is this the first time we've ever done this, or have we always done this and I just missed it?
We have been making this comparison and seeing it consistently, that pre-K is working and that the Fort Worth ISD pre-K is working. We have students that are in our biliteracy program that may take it in both, just to gauge their proficiency in language in both English and Spanish, and so we don't want to double count them, and so we're counting them where they are most proficient in that.
I think that's cool. Thank you so much. Any other questions from the board? All right, then we'll move on. Thank you all so much. At this time, we'll call the public hearing to order, public hearing to discuss the district's 2022 financial accountability rating. I'm told that there are no speakers this evening, so I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Ramsey.
Thank you. This evening, we have a public hearing, as we said, and we have our chief, Arrieta Candelaria, who's going to come up and speak to us first about our first rating. So I will turn it over to her.
Yes, good evening. Thank you so much, Dr. Ramsey. President Jackson, members of the board. I'm here to present the 2022 Schools First First rating. With me today is Maria Chavez. She is our comptroller, and she's here to assist, answer any questions that we might have with regards to this report. This is the public hearing for what's called the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, otherwise known as the FIRST. Maria has passed out a booklet to you that we also publish on our website, and it's available to the public for them to review. The purpose of School First is this is a financial accountability rating system that holds school districts accountable for the quality of their financial management practices. It's a tool that creates transparency and discloses the quality of decision-making processes concerning the financial resources for school districts. It came about, this is the 20th year of this program, and it came about as a result to TA's response to Senate Bill 875 of the 76th Texas Legislature in 1999. And what it does, the way that the ratings are assessed, there's 20 indicators. 5 of them are more of a pass-fail. And then there's 15 other that provide a numerical score based on a range of 0 to 100. In this particular year, they have waived 3 of those indicators because of COVID. So TA will not be, did not rate school districts on 3 of the 20 indicators. The ratings that came out it's you either get an A, B, C, or an F based on that numerical score that you received on your financial statements. The major areas that are assessed, there's 5 critical indicators, as I indicated, that you get a pass or a fail. Fort Worth ISD passed 4 indicators, and again, the 5th indicator was not scored in the current year. There's solvency indicators. There's 10 indicators for a score of 85 points. Fort Worth ISD scored 79 of the 85 points available, and those are outlined in the report. And then there's 5 indicators related to financial competence, or 15 points. Fort Worth ISD received 15 of 15 points. Some of the requirements for public posting is that we have to announce and hold a public meeting, which we're doing that today, within 2 months of the release of the final first rating. That final was released on September 7th, and we also were required to have a notice of public hearing published in the newspaper, which we did on October 14th, and then we're having this public hearing today to give the public an opportunity to comment on our performance. So the requirements also call for that we must prepare and distribute an annual financial management report, which is the report that was handed out. It compares the current year and then the prior year ratings. And the disclosures, as I indicated earlier, are now included in Title 19 of the Texas Administrative Code, Chapter 109, under Budgeting, Accounting, and Auditing, Subchapter AA. There are also certain disclosures that are required by TA's rules and in Section 109.1001. There's also, as I indicated, we've also published it in the Fort Worth ISD under the Accounting Department. And so I am pleased to announce that we did receive a rating of superior. We received 94 out of 100 score. And we have received that superior ranking for the last now 5 years, beginning in 2017, 2018, all the way until the current year for reporting. So with that, is there any questions related to the report? Okay.
I'd like to say thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, these are ratings from 2021, so they were from prior years, and I think the district did a great job.
District did a great job. You're continuing to do a great job, and thank you for a great presentation. Trustee Dar, did you have a question? And then Trustee Evans?
Oh, yes, very quickly. Who outside of Fort Worth ISD helps to put this report together?
Well, TEA assists if we have questions, but Ms. Chavez prepares the report. I review it.
Okay.
And then we have to actually submit it as
To
well.
TEA?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Trustee Evans?
Do we have any idea of where we're going to score or land for this year's fiscal soundness? Is it going to be the same set of criteria?
So, well, we ran some preliminary.
Okay.
We think we're going to be comparable. We do watch those as we go, both of us being new and coming in mid-year. We did look at a couple of metrics where we thought that perhaps there may be some concern. But I think we decided we're going to score in the same range or a little bit better. Okay. So we do look at the indicators, and it does guide our work. Some of them are difficult to predict, but there's a lot of one that we can control. And we do try to ensure that the practices that we utilize in our daily management are going to be reflected favorably through the indicators.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions? Okay.
Okay.
We'll move on to close the public hearing. And again, we had no public comments, so the public hearing is now closed. At this time, we will hear public comment addressing items on the agenda, as well as items of a general nature or topics not specifically listed on the agenda. Please allow me to remind you that because of restrictions by the Texas Open Meetings Act, board members may not engage in a verbal exchange about a subject that has not been posted. We will listen and we will take notes, but the board is prohibited from responding to any inquiries made during a board meeting on any topic not posted on the agenda. However, the board may reply with one A statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry. 2, recitation of existing policy in response to the inquiry. Or 3, direct the person to visit with staff about the issue. While the board listens to concerns of a general nature, speakers should practice normal rules of decorum. Vulgar language and profanity will not be tolerated, as this is a public meeting and our students are watching. Additionally, disruptions of the meeting will not be tolerated. We ask the audience to refrain from interrupting speakers and playing audio recordings while they present to the board. Any employee, parent, or other member of the public is asked to comply with the appropriate grievance policy to have a complaint heard pursuant to the applicable board policy. No presentation may exceed 3 minutes unless the speaker has prior approval for additional time because of the use of a translator. Furthermore, a speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another speaker. It is essential to gain as much public input as possible, and we understand together we are stronger and build better solutions when we maximize public input. I ask that you please observe these rules for the purpose of effectively accomplishing the business of the meeting in a timely manner. And our first speaker will be 2 students and their faculty member from the Young Men's Leadership Academy in District 3, Mr. Bart Cook, and 2 students. It's not Bart Cook, Bart Scott, but I do know Bart Cook.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I am Brother Ronnie Johnson from the Young Men's Leadership Academy.
I'm Brother Jared Salcedo, Vice President of the class of 2023.
And today we'll be presenting the YMLA workshop.
So I'll be more focused on what my class has done in our engineering department. So for our freshman year, we made an it's a very hard word, automotive word, I believe that's the word. Basically, it's a little box that would have a gear, or not a gear, a cam piece that's in the shape of an egg. What that will do is be attached to a stick, and then that will basically animate whatever design we put on top of the box. For a sophomore year, unfortunately, we were very, very limited of what we could do, but we did not let that affect us in any way. We would use Tinkercad, which is a 3D modeling software. Me, personally, I used it to my fullest extent, and I made a TIE fighter from Star Wars. Later on, I was able to actually print it and got a grade for it, so that was great. For our junior year, we were very happy to come back to YMLA and actually do more hands-on activities. Our most impressive piece was our college plaques. What that entailed was that we would have to use Inventables, which is a website that also designs/carves whatever we made. The only criteria for that was to have our name, class year, university of choice, and the logo with it. What that entailed was to have those 4 things on there, actually use a gelatin to fill it in, sand it over, and actually put a protective coating over it. And I have a couple of those at home, so that was very fun. Even though our senior year has far from over, we've been able to put a much more bigger focus on inventive manufacturing. What that entails is that we use, example, Battleship, I believe is the name of the game, chess and checkers, and basically add a new piece to it. For me personally, we made 3 new pieces for Battleship, which were very fun to make, and also used on Tinkercad. And thank you.
Continuing with what the workshop has done this year, we have partnered with YWLA's crafts to make senior signs, which we are selling through the class of 2023. Those signs are designed by YWLA and manufactured in the workshop. And as a special thanks to the board, we have manufactured individual signs for each of you. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for those comments, and yeah, go YMLA.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for speaking. You all did an excellent job. And Mr. Scott, I apologize for calling you Mr. Cook. Ernesto Moran is our next speaker. He'll be followed by Mr. Mike C.
I want to acknowledge that we are settlers on land ceded and shared by the Tawakani, Jumanos, Kickapoo, Wichita, and Comanche nations. I'm a high school teacher and coach in the district and the parent of 3 students in the district. I want to start by welcoming our new superintendent to the city and the district. Dr. Ramsey, I look forward to your continuing to build on the foundation set by the board, the staff of this district, and your predecessor in working and taking to heart our pledge to work for all students, which leads me to why I'm here to speak to you today. Though the agenda is lengthy, I am heartened by the consent agenda items listed at the outset. Things like books, science and math kits, welding machines, and even software show this board's receptiveness to what those of us in the classroom are telling you we need. And you're listening, which is good. I ask you to continue to do that. Listen to teachers. That shouldn't seem like a courageous thing to do, but when the governor creates a safety commission and neglects to put a single active classroom teacher on it until he is shamed into doing so, listening to teachers is a courageous act. When conspiracy theorists and those with political agendas accuse us of grooming kids or worse, listening to teachers is a courageous act. And when people step up to this very microphone and seek to take us back to segregated schools and white supremacist curriculum by blasting equity work and diverse literature and labeling it CRT, or by laughably conflating social emotional learning with CRT, listening to teachers is a courageous act. I would be remiss not to mention the lives lost and those wounded at Central Visual and Performing Arts High School in South St. Louis yesterday, and how our society failed them. Because while those up here and in Austin who've never taught a day in their lives have called for an increased security presence, locked doors, and basically any measure that doesn't have to do with weapons, here's what we know about that incident. The shooter was 19 years old with no prior criminal history and carried more than a dozen high-capacity magazines. The school's doors were closed and locked, and there were metal detectors on the premises, and there were 7 security officers on the campus of nearly 700 students. And yet again, society places its failures at the feet of a school and asks us to solve this gun violence epidemic by hardening our schools. And when they do, and they inevitably will, listening to teachers will again be a courageous act. So keep doing what you're doing. They're entitled to their 2 or 3 minutes up here, but they're not entitled to dismantling public education or to instituting Jim Crow 2.0 in our schools. I say peace be with you if you're willing to fight for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mike C. will be followed by Ms. Mary Lowe.
Well, I ask you, why a teacher with clear Marxist leanings, a teacher that supports a domestic terrorist group, a group that burned down cities, small businesses, public assets, looted and hoodwinked corporations for personal gain. A teacher that appears to indoctrinate his own young family members into homosexuality. A teacher that boasts of your students protecting him in the event of an incident in his classroom. I ask you, what is he doing to your children in the classroom? How does this even happen? Why does this teacher have a separate library in his classroom? How is this library monitored? When it's the teacher who is adding the books to the collection. With teachers like this, what is happening? What is happening here all leads to tearing down our country. This teacher, through his actions and his words, including some on this board, are purely acting as an anarchist, a socialist, an abolitionist. This teacher desires the destruction of our capitalist system. I would not have this teacher near any child of mine, nor should you.
Mary Lowe will be followed by Jennifer Traeger.
Good evening, trustees. I am here tonight to speak to you about compliance with the law. House Bill 1525 passed in the 87th legislature made some changes to your Student Health and Advisory Committee. And as best as I can tell from the minutes that are reported, your SHAC is not in compliance. I see no minutes from 2 meetings, and I see no presentation or public participation in instructional material adoption. I know that many of you find me challenging or confrontational, and my goal repeatedly is to bring all school districts in the state of Texas in compliance with the law. When you're in compliance with the law, you're providing the best education and being the best member of your community that you can be. I'm asking tonight that you remove action 15, W and Z from the agenda and bring your SHAC board in compliance. If you continue to operate with your SHAC board out of compliance, you're also in violation of Education Code 26. I will file a report with the Texas Education Agency, and I will file grievances, and we'll go through this process until it's resolved. So please do remove this from the agenda. Thank you. And just as an FYI, didn't plan to speak on this, but the MAPS testing, you get us skewed, and you need to understand this. With MAPS, a student answers a question. If they get it wrong, it takes them on a different track so that the level that they're being asked to perform is lowered so that they find success. MAPS is not considered a testing measurement that's static. So it's not an accurate view of how a child is doing relative to other schools or a previous year. It just isn't. So you're going to need to use an Iowa or your STAR for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Traeger will be followed by Meredith Bowman.
Hi, I am a taxpayer and a mom of 4. One has 4 legs. My 7-year-old asked me to say that tonight, so I told her I would. She's one of the reasons I come to these meetings. But tonight I am here to talk about safety and security in our schools. A friend of mine has a son in 8th grade, and last week he told her that he saw another student that had a knife at school. And no teachers or admin knew about it or ever found out about it. And that's a very unsettling feeling. And it makes me imagine that there are probably more of this situation that goes on out there than we know about. But if we look at this meeting here, we have admin and the board is up here, and there's about 30 of you. And then we have public and personnel out here, and there's always 2 police officers here. And then there's 6 to 10 district security officers. So my question is, why are these meetings more secured than our schools, where we send our most prized possessions every single day and hope that they're going to be safe and taken care of? I know that y'all are working on the SROs, and last meeting y'all talked about it, but I didn't know what the latest was, and if we can maybe speed that up, because there's a need for that out there. Is there also an officer to student ratio, like a teacher to student ratio, and do some campuses need more officers than others if they don't already have that? It's a sad reality. It's the world we live in. These kids need to learn to fear and respect authority, which is taught within the homes. And these students should not be bringing anything into campuses, whether it's a knife or a firearm, or I used to sub in Irving, and a kid brought brass knuckles one day. So these kids find things that they want to bring. But these kids are young, their brains aren't fully developed. We really don't want any sort of impulse decision made. We need them to learn how to have healthy conflict resolution and not harmful. And so anyway, just wondering if we could maybe use some of the money from the proposed $3 million for the new admin building to maybe up our security on our campuses. I know that people come here every meeting with lots of concerns and issues, and I know we don't all see eye to eye, but I do feel like this is an area that we definitely see eye to eye, because they are, as I said, our most prized possessions. So thank you.
Thank you. Meredith Bowman will be followed by Scott Blanco Davis.
Good evening, trustees and public. I am Meredith Bowman, mom of 2, Fort Worth ISD taxpayer, and a Fort Worth ISD teacher. Oh, that's loud. I don't know why I always get nervous when I come up here, but I would like to just start off by thanking Ms. Starr and her communication with me. With the last meeting, I asked several questions, and she led me to the people that I needed to contact. I am still in conversation over a few of those questions, and I'm still waiting on receiving some clarity, so I do appreciate that correspondence. Going back and forth on the things that I'd like to say this evening about SHAC, after listening to Ms. Lowe speak, I just like to address this coming from a teacher. I'm uncertain of the law. I'm a teacher, and I trust that everybody does their job that are above me, and so I just like to trust them and do my job. However, in my experience of last year with the surveys, I realized that that was not the case. My boss did their job. She thought she was doing what she was supposed to do, and later finding out that was not okay. I'm just really concerned that if what is happening is out of compliance, that you're putting teachers into situations that they're uncertain if that's really what they're supposed to be teaching in that listed item 15W. Understanding that the SHAC committee hasn't been established yet this year, I'm not exactly sure how that works with the law, if it was last year's group or if it's this year's group that has to go over that. But it is important to me to be a teacher, to be able to trust the people that are making those decisions, that you're doing that. We don't have that time to investigate all that information, so I'm just asking for you to table it, maybe think about it, I don't know, just making sure we're in compliance. So I do believe it's possible, maybe we could be unaware of that it's not in compliance, but I do thank you for your time, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Scott Blanco Davis will be followed by Joe Palmer.
Good afternoon, Board. Good afternoon, Superintendent Ramsey. Superintendent Ramsey, I want to first say thank you. It seems as if you're a person of action and your word is true. You've been in the schools, you've listened to the teachers, and those of you that know me know that I'm an advocate for my students and my fellow teachers. So I'm coming today again to talk about why teachers are walking away from not only the profession, but Fort Worth ISD a lot of times. And it has to do with, hey, money's great, but there's professional dignity, there's professional trust, and there's just professionalism. And I can tell you sometimes it's hard to trust when you have situations like we're going through. I love my school. We have won an NCUSP award in our 4th year. Imagine what we could do if, since 2017, I actually got the safety equipment in my science lab, and we have one working science lab in the school that had a chemical shower and, I don't know, a vent hood that didn't vent into the rest of the building, just some safety equipment. It took 5 years to get gas lines and electric lines that had automatic shutoffs for the teachers. That's a lot of trust. It's hard to gain back. I shouldn't have to be up here and ask for those things. We're asked as teachers to put our kids first, and we do. We do tutoring after school. We come before school. Well, some days I get there at 7:20 and leave at 8:30. I need that kind of support from my district. Professional support helps. I shouldn't have to ask for safety equipment. On other things, I've talked to y'all before. Our stipends. There's a reason you give a stipend. That's to attract people to a specific job. Bilingual classes, higher math, higher science. My science colleagues left school today early during the middle of a faculty meeting because they have another science training to go to that's going to fulfill something like 20 to 24 hours that they have to do to get $1,800. Don't ask about the math stipend. I'm not sure what bilingual has to do, but I don't think it's what we have to do. That should be even for everybody, or it should just be given. I don't understand why there's so much work and why I have to choose to either get the money for my stipend or do 24 hours of work for my kids, my students. Look, I only have 3 minutes. I try to give you all the teacher perspective. It's hard to be professional when you don't feel like you're getting from the other.
Time, thank you.
Thank you. Joe Palmer will be followed by Stephen Poole. Mr. Poole?
Good evening, excuse me, good evening, members of the board and Dr. Ramsey, President Jackson. I'm Stephen Poole with UEA, and tonight I wanted to share with you our recent teacher salary comparison. For the last 29 years, we've compared teacher salaries across 32 districts here in North Texas at 5-year intervals beginning at year 0 and ending at year 30. And you can see tonight at year 0, Fort Worth ISD ranks 8th out of the 32 districts. Y'all were edged out by Crowley by $10 at that 7th spot, just to point that out. But at year 5, you're number 1 out of 32 districts. At year 10, number 3. Year 15, number 2. Year 20, number 2. Year 25, year number 3. And year 30, you're 1st. This is excellent news for the school district. I looked just this afternoon 5 years ago. You weren't anywhere near the top 5. At year 10, you were actually ranked 13th out of 32. And that was right before the tax ratification election was approved by voters that freed up money that went towards not only teacher but employee salaries. And salaries is very important. That's usually the driving factor on someone choosing to go into a school or leave a school district. But it's not the only factor either. We also know benefits and working conditions are also equally important. Interesting note, an alternative certification program out of East Texas contacted me today about our salary comparison and wanted more information and asked for me to come speak to their teacher candidates who may not be familiar with Metroplex school districts. Most of our teachers now in Texas are coming from alternative certification programs, maybe career changers. So touting this information as a district to attract them in is very, very important. This is just base salaries. This is not stipends. We always hear about starting teacher salary, and it's in districts all across the state and including in North Texas, have a arms race to be the highest paying to attract people into the profession in their district. You'll rank number 8th, but that doesn't account for the aggressive stipends that you approved for new hires this year. But take a look at where you value your employees, and that's with employees with experience here in Fort Worth ISD. That is admirable as a district, and that shows your commitment to the employees. And it can be done. It is your work. It's the CFO's work. It's the head of talent management, the deputy superintendent, the superintendent that have all pulled together, and the community supporting the tax ratification election to get us to this point. But hard work went into getting us here, but just like in a garden, we always have to tend it because we can't be moving backward and caught unawares in a hiring war right now, 5 years that we're back in the middle of the pack. So thank you. I want to share that information.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their thoughts, and we're going to gavel out now and go into executive session. And I'd like to ask that the Young Men's Leadership Academy students, we are doing a discussion. I want to ask if the Young Men's Leadership and Academy students and their faculty member could come up and please take a picture. Thanks again to each of you for being here tonight and sharing your thoughts with us. It's nice to have a full house, and when you leave, it does get cold, so please stay. As board president, I'm making the following statement in accordance with board policy BBFA local. This is a reminder to all board members of the legal conflict of interest requirements and disclosure requirements you may have for matters under consideration on the agenda for this meeting. If required by law, board members shall recuse themselves from all discussion and shall abstain from voting on any matter pertaining to such a disclosure. I'd like to ask at this time, does anyone have any questions or comments concerning this consent agenda item tonight? Trustee Dar.
Thank you, President Jackson. I just have one question for Dr. Sorensen. This is an easy one. It really is an easy question. It's going to take you more effort to get to the seat. Item B10, which is approved purchase of meals and snacks for students during targeted learning opportunities, which is the Saturday Learning Quest.
Yes,
for
ma'am.
$168,000. Is that for the entire year of snacks? And
I had to look at Carmen, and she's shaking her head no. No.
no.
Now
Oh, I thought
Carmen's
this was an
coming.
easy question.
No. Carmen says no.
Okay.
And please know that I think, and Dr. Ramsey also alluded to it earlier, that this is, we will be doing ongoing evaluation. We will be evaluating the data. I think when we presented Saturday Learning Quest to you guys, there may be adjustments that we make at the semester. We were looking at attendance data for program effectiveness and fiscal responsibility to the board. And to the community. And we'll be looking at attendance data after the first semester, and if necessary, doing program reduction, which is why we then did just do snacks for the first semester. We did learn midway through that there were certain funding sources that we could not use for snacks and food, which I think I will then defer to my CFO for.
Grant funding.
Yes, and so the answer to the question is, it's about half.
Okay.
And so Dr. Sorensen indicated that we were going to do some evaluation at mid-year, so we decided to only bring half at this time, do an assessment, and then come back with another budget amendment if we needed to, and also based on the spend for the first semester, because of the number of kids that were originally estimated. It came in lower than the original estimate, so we just decided, why don't we just do a reset at mid-year and then appropriate the funds.
Okay. So for the record, I support feeding children at Saturday Learning Quest.
We know that. Trustee Dar. We're very
I
aware.
just wanted to know to what extent this, if I see it again on the agenda, I know why.
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Quick question. B9, approved purchase of air handler unit for Polytechnic High School. I'm thrilled that we're getting an air handler unit. Just want to make sure when we start on the next bond, the 2021, that we look at these and make sure that we catch all of them in the bond. And the other comment I had was on L, approved Kaboom 25 and 5 initiative to end playground inequity. To that I say thank you. It's important for our kids, and the excitement that you see on their faces when one of those Kaboom playgrounds opens is unbelievable. Any other questions? All right. The time is 7:08 p.m. The date's Tuesday, October 25th, 2022. We will now recess and reconvene for executive session. It's authorized by Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code under Chapters 551, 071, 2, 4, and 6. In accordance with the open meetings law, the board opened the meeting at 5:31 p.m. with a quorum present, recessed and reconvened open session, adjourned regular session, convened executive session, adjourned executive session, and we have now reconvened with each of you in open session at 8:41 p.m., and we have a quorum present. We'll move to 13 on the agenda, which is accept the consent agenda items. Do I have a motion accepting this consent agenda? Moved by Trustee Evans, seconded by Trustee Ryan. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none, let's please move to voting. And the motion passes unanimously. 14A, we didn't have any items removed from the consent agenda. The next action item, I will hand off to Dr. Ramsey.
Thank you. President Jackson and board, I would respectfully ask that we pull 2 items from today's action agenda, and that's 14 rather, B1, that's the personnel action, and on 15 action item W. Thank you.
Thank you. Please let the record reflect that we've pulled 14B1 and 15W per the superintendent's request. Thank you, Dr. Ramsey. We're moving on to 15 action items. And we're going to take these action items together, A through M. Do I have a motion? Trustee Phillips with the motion, seconded by Trustee Martinez. Any questions? Let's move to voting. Motion passes unanimously. We'll move to action item N. Discussion and action to approve purchase of furniture of the district's facility located at 7060 Camp Bowie Boulevard, Fort Worth, Texas. Do I have a motion? Moved by Trustee Evans. I'll take the second. Any discussion? Trustee Darr.
Thank you, President Jackson. I do have some questions regarding the funding for this purchase, and then it is a sizable purchase, and we need to make sure we're doing our due diligence. So my questions are, what are the parameters, the requirements, and the limitations to the use of the money that Fort Worth ISD received from the sale of the properties, otherwise known as the Real Estate Sales Proceeds Fund? And so in other words, how can this money be used by the district?
Yes, good evening. Well, basically, the fund was established as a result of the action from the board with regards to how we were going to account for the sale of the real estate. And so it could have gone into the general fund if it had been not designated for a specific purpose, but it was not. It was designated for this particular designation, and since it was a capital project, so we're accounting for it in a capital projects fund. And so what happens is that unless specifically designated for a specific use, real estate proceeds can be used for, are really unrestricted and can go back into the general fund. Typically, there's some restrictions in the event that if the real estate was purchased or it was sold and had been purchased by bond proceeds, and those bonds are still outstanding. So we would have to make sure we clear that hurdle. Additionally, if the real estate was purchased with federal dollars or some type of grant dollars that had a particular restriction, then we would have to get permission from that entity. But that wasn't the case with regards to these proceeds. The district sold property that was on the general fund rolls, if you will, and then those proceeds were designated for a specific purpose. In this case was to construct a new administrative building along with any associated moves, and it was deemed appropriate to be accounted for in a separate capital projects fund, and that's what has been done. Okay. There is a best practice that, well, first, there's no board policies with regards to any restrictions as to the sale of real estate. There is a GFOA best practice that says whenever you do sell real estate or a capital asset, that those assets should be used for another capital asset or another investment. That's a good practice because that maintains your asset pool. So that's with regards to the sale of the real estate.
Okay, so can the proceeds from the real estate be used to provide salaries or stipends for teachers?
Yes, they can be because they weren't restricted for that particular use. However, best practice, there's no policy for it. So, but best practice is that if you sell a capital asset, the best practice is to invest in other capital assets. The salaries and those type of expenditures that you indicated are ongoing commitments, as opposed to the proceeds from the sale of real estate. It's a one-time occurrence, one-time benefit, as opposed to a salary that is not. So that's the general practice, but there's no restriction.
So we'd be putting ourselves in a precarious position.
Right, because you're not getting those, you're not having recurring revenues. So you would have to find alternative revenue source to continue the expenditures in ensuing years.
Okay, so I've been to the current administration building. I recognize the need for some new furniture. It is old, it is tired. Yet are we in the process of capitalizing on existing resources in the district before we purchase new furniture for the ad building?
So the new administration building is constructed and renovated very different than our current one. We will have this office space, individual office spaces will be much smaller, and we'll have more of like a built-in furniture versus individual desk and office suite type of furniture. They're much smaller than we currently have. Our current administration building has a lot of individual offices and is not really efficient when we look at workspace and how we utilize that space. The new one is, and you've seen some renderings of it, is more of how we're putting divisions together and then also making a storefront so it's accessible for employees to meet their needs when they come to HCM, employee services, even some technology needs, as well as benefits. So we have a storefront that would be very user-friendly, and then in the back is more of our workspace that would be more efficient. When we say the cubicle word, it gives it really a bad kind of feel sometimes, but that is how businesses are set up now and how our workspace will move into that more efficient space. The board item that is on for tonight also includes our new boardroom, which will go back to more of a traditional setting. So that is included in the price, as well as some of our common area spaces similar to what you see out here in the lobby and the TLC. We'll have that collaboration space spread throughout the new administration building, including going into the new boardroom. We will have a cafeteria space that will need to be furnished as well for our employees. Currently, our employees do not have access to any food service or beverage service in the building that we're currently in, so they'll have that access again, so that will be furnished as well in addition to our office space. High density filing, so we have a lot of files and needs, of course, for records that have to have different storage, and the filing system is it's just massive. It has to be constructed to the wall differently, so that's including into the furnishings as well.
Okay, thank you. And my next question was, does this include the new boardroom?
Yes, ma'am.
Because I can imagine that stadium seating is quite pricey.
Yes, and also our communications department, we will be furnishing that out of this board agenda item. We have our anchor desk that you see a lot of our videos, a lot of our students come and do activities as well. Our whiz quiz that we do. So you'll see some of those features being brought back for our students as well as our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that answer, or all of those answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Dar. Thank you all. Any other questions? Okay, the item is N, discussion and action to approve the purchase of furniture of the district's facility located at 7060 Camp Bowie Boulevard, Fort Worth, Texas. It was moved by Trustee Evans, seconded by Trustee Jackson. Please move to voting. And the motion passes unanimously. We will now take O through Z as one item as well. And I will ask for a motion. Trustee Evans, and a second from Trustee Ryan. Any discussion? Let's move to voting. The motion passes unanimously. At this time, we're on 16, comments by current board members or superintendent on district activities and announcements. Do we have any? Trustee Martinez.
I just wanted to recognize and thank the United Lowrider Council for their continuous support of our school communities. This past Sunday, they co-hosted a trunk or treat at Diamond Hill Jarvis High School that supported many student groups, and they also have another one coming up this Sunday at Northside High School and a rescheduled event for Carter Riverside High School. These events have supported several student groups and senior classes, and they've also brought the community together and increased community engagement out our campuses. And so I just wanted to recognize and thank the United Lowrider Council.
Thank you. Trustee Evans?
I just wanted to point out that several of our high school teams are sending kids to the state cross-country competition. And I know cross-country can tend to get lost in the wake of football. And so I just wanted to congratulate those runners and our cross-country coaches for doing so much for our student athletes.
Thank you. Trustee Dr. Camille Rodriguez.
Hi, yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank the teachers who wrote the nice little thank you cards for their pay raise. That was very nice that they took time out to do that. And I'd also like to congratulate the JP Elder Mariachis who performed at the documentary of Gus Garcia this past weekend, and they just lit up the whole room, and the acoustics were wonderful. And also the JP Elder Fall Festival was held Saturday, and that was a great event. They had dunk boots for the teachers and the bull riding and a bouncy bounce. So it was a great time, and it had a great crowd. So thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Bridges.
Just want to give a shout out to Oaklawn Elementary. I had an opportunity to visit them today, and I was just so impressed with the young people, how they worked in groups and how articulate they were explaining what they were working on. It was just, man, it just made my day. So huge shout out to them for the work that they're doing over there.
Thank you, Trustee Bridges. Trustee Dar?
Yes, a shout out to Westcliff Elementary for their Hispanic Heritage Family Night. It was well attended, it was well run, it was enjoyable. Thank you to the Paschal mariachi band who came and played. People all sat out in their lawn chairs and listened, and there were dancers and there were food trucks. And a huge thank you to the Paschal Hispanic Society for coordinating a lot of this event, for manning the tables that were there for kids to participate in Hispanic cultural activities, and for really pulling it together and making it happen. So it was a great evening. It was beautiful weather. It was just you could not leave the event without a smile. So.
Trustee Rodriguez.
Yes, sorry, I forgot to mention that JP Elder also created a Northside Eats community food bank, which their first one was this past Saturday, and they had a great crowd, a lot of families being fed, and they're going to also continue that, I think, 2 Saturdays a month and 2 Tuesdays a month. And also Kirkpatrick Middle also has a food bank for that part of the north side, so we're doing our best to feed the community.
Trustee Bridges.
I'm sorry. I wanted to make sure we did a shout out for I Am Terrell today. They were awesome. If you did not get a chance to see them or hear them perform, you missed a treat. And it just changed the whole atmosphere of having them perform. And I just wish we could do that more often and having different groups come in. And it showcases the great work that's being in the school. But more importantly, it changes the whole atmosphere of the room. So.
Thank you, Trustee Bridges. And if you weren't here, you can look at his Facebook, and he Facebook Lived the entire performance. So thank you, Trustee Bridges. I want to give a quick shout out to the Poly Alumni Association. They hosted the largest Polytechnic parade in the history of the school this last week, and as well, Eastern Hills High School had their parade. The community involvement, the teacher involvement, the student involvement, and the fact that they won, that works. So I'm very proud of both of those schools. And at this time, I'd like to honor a person that's been very important in the city and also a wonderful educator, Bert Williams. He's in the hospital at this time, and I want to close the meeting out in his honor. Thank you.